Hello everyone, Jarrett Hoffman here with another HBCU Sports exclusive video, here to give you my recap of week 10 of the HBCU football season, a very eventful and impactful week in HBCU football this weekend. Let's get right into it with the SWAC, where Jackson State and Alabama State both get big wins with their backup quarterbacks. So last week, for those who forgot, which I'm pretty sure none of you forgot, Jackson State, suffered its first conference loss of the season against Grambling State in a Las Vegas HBCU Classic. In that game, starting quarterback Jacoby Morgan went down with an injury and would be out for the remainder of the game. And it was Jarrett Lockhart who came in and finished the game for Jackson State, in which they eventually lost. And this week, Jarrett Lockhart got the start. Jacoby Morgan still not back. Still don't know the extent of the injury or how long he'll be out. But for the time being, Jarrett Lockhart stepped into that role and did just enough to get Jackson State a fairly convincing 41-16 win over Florida A&M in Bragg Stadium. So Jarrett Lockhart ended up with just 104 passing yards, only needed 10 pass attempts, completed 5 of them, and scored a touchdown in the game. But the story was the run game of Jackson State. 392 rushing yards on 56 attempts, 7 yards a carry on 56 attempts, 4 total touchdowns. To start the game, Ahmad Miller had 165 rushing yards on 19 attempts. Denario Davenport also rushed for over 100 yards, had 112 on 16 carries, and also scored a touchdown. So a big win for Jackson State to stay at the top of the SWAC East for the time being, especially considering the team that I'm about to talk about also got a big win over this current SWAC West leaders. But to finish off on Jackson State, this is a big win for them. This is a performance that they very much needed coming off of that loss. With Jacoby and Morgan being out, there was a lot of questions, especially with it being a deadlock at the top of the SWAC with Alabama State and Bethune-Cookman both being tied with Jackson State entering the weekend. Whether or not Jackson State had enough in the tank to be able to get past Florida A&M and to win out, to be able to improve its likelihood of getting back to the SWAC championship game. And fortunately for them, Florida A&M just seemingly did not have what it took to keep up. This is unfortunately the worst we've seen Florida A&M look in the SWAC. I don't think it's harsh to say that. I'm pretty sure Florida A&M fans, the players themselves, and the coaches, if they were honest with themselves, would look in themselves in the mirror and say, we are not good enough to win at a high level at this current moment. So Jackson State limped into this game and they made it out pretty much unscathed. And they maintain control of the SWAC East. Meanwhile, the team directly behind them came into this game fully healthy and limped out of this game. That's Andrew Body, who before his injury was 5 of 7 passing, had 79 passing yards, and also had 29 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. But went down, I believe, in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to correct me on that, but was injured in this game and was forced to miss the remainder of the game. And it was Tyshawn Smoot who finished the game for Alabama State. Didn't have to do much, had 42 passing yards on 49 attempts. But like Jackson State, it was the run game that did the job for Alabama State. And it was Jamari Holtzclaw, who finished with 127 rushing yards on 21 attempts. Marcus Harris II only had 20 rushing yards, but scored 2 touchdowns in this game. And Alabama State endured what makes this so impressive is that they endured a 21-7 deficit, scored 24 unanswered points to enter the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead, and held off Prairie View A&M, who scored a touchdown late, but did not have enough to overcome that 24 point barrage from Alabama State. So big wins for both Jackson State and Alabama State. The question now is, what will be the status of Andrew Body and Jacobian Morgan going forward? Coach Eddie Robinson talked post game about Andrew Body's condition, his injury, and the possibility of how long he could be out. He said this briefly post game. He said, "We don't know the extent of the injury. Hopefully, he will be back this year. We're just very proud of the guys, regardless, and a lot of respect for Prairie View and what they are doing." Now, I'm not sure, if this was just a Freudian slip, or I don't know if that's the right term. But anyway, but hopefully he will be back this year. I'm trying not to read too much into that, but that gives me cause for concern that he said hopefully he will be back this year. Because it makes it seem like it is a serious injury, and that he could potentially miss the remainder of the year. I don't want to put words into his mouth. I just want to look at his words for what it is, which is just him speaking his mind. He's probably just saying that he hopes he's okay. That's probably all he meant by that. But I can't help but overthink and say, like, well, do you think it's a serious injury? Do you think it's going to keep him out for the remainder of the year? Do you think it's going to have a long-term effect on his football career? I can't help but think like that. But at any rate, no matter what happens, whether he misses next week or misses the next couple of weeks, this will be a big story for Alabama State, considering they are very much in the SWAC championship race. Them, Jackson State, and also Bethune-Cookman, who got a win this weekend over Mississippi Valley State, they're all deadlocked at 4-1 in the conference. And right now, Bethune-Cookman is the healthiest. And if I'm not mistaken, Jackson State goes up against Bethune-Cookman very soon. If it's not this upcoming weekend, it's the following weekend. So, Jackson State is in the driver's seat for the moment, but if health is withstanding, it's anybody's race right now. Jarrett Lockhart and I'm sorry, I forget the Tashawn Smoot. They're both going to have to step up when it matters most, because the remaining teams on their schedule, they are going to look at that run game and say, no, that's not going to work. They're going to have to get their quarterbacks involved if they want to win this game. And we have not seen either of these quarterbacks deliver when it matters most, when the game is on the line. So we'll see how the SWAC championship race is impacted by these injuries and these developments. But as for now, Jackson State still holds the keys to the SWAC East until proven otherwise. Now we shift over to Division II, where we know half of the championship race in both the CIAA and the SIAC. Albany State and Virginia Union both got big wins this weekend to clinch championship title berths. Albany State had a much tougher fight in its bid for a championship berth. They beat Savannah State 21-18 in a game that went down to the wire, that Albany State actually led 14-0. And Savannah State clawed its way back into the game, trimmed it to a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. But ultimately, Albany State held firm late in the game, and they got a big win. And Savannah State was in this game despite what was not a very good performance on offense. Multiple turnovers. The defense very much kept them in this game. Forced 2 interceptions on Isaiah Knowles in this game. What a very non-Isaiah Knowles-like performance in this game. But they did just enough to get the win and to clinch the title berth. Isaiah Knowles had 182. I'm almost certain that's a season low for him. 182 passing yards on 18 of 29 passing, two touchdowns, and like I said, 2 interceptions. And it was not the best run performance from offensively. This was just not Albany State like. but I'm pretty sure they're very much happy with the win. Only had 62 rushing yards on 34 attempts, but the defense got it done for them, forced 3 interceptions in this game. And yeah, the defense was definitely the hero of the game for Quinn Gray and this Albany State team, who will now be the host of the SIAC championship game. I believe this is the first time they've hosted the SIC championship game since 2021, when they beat Miles in that game. So we'll see if history repeats itself in that one. Virginia Union did not have as much of a tough time. I don't even know how to sugarcoat it. They dog walked. They dog walked Bluefield State. 70-14 was the final score in that game. And they got the legendary performance of a lifetime from Curtis Allen in this one. I don't think words can even describe how great Curtis Allen was in this game. I'm just going to put up his numbers. And let's look at this. A CIAA record, 369 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. Those were his numbers. And by the way, it wasn't just him. The team as a whole averaged nearly 10 yards per carry on 56 carries. Nearly 10 yards per carry on 56 carries. Overall, they averaged 11 yards per play. They had no trouble whatsoever against Bluefield State. And Curtis Allen was a big part of that. And I've been saying it for weeks, and I'm done beating around the bush. I'm just going to be straightforward. There's not no maybe. It's not a probably. It's not a question at all about this. Curtis Allen is the Deacon Jones Trophy winner. He is the Black College Football Player of the Year. Hold on. Let me make myself full screen so I can say this. Curtis Allen is there is no question. There is no maybe. There is no might be. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. Curtis Allen is the Black College Football Player of the Year. He will win the Deacon Jones Trophy, or he should win the Deacon Jones Trophy. If he doesn't win the Deacon Jones Trophy, there is something wrong. There's something wrong. There is no debate about it. Unfortunately, we've had guys who would have been in the discussion that have unfortunately been bit by injuries. Isaiah Knowles could have been in that discussion had it not been for injuries. Andrew Body, who just ended up being hurt in this game, could have been in that discussion if not for injuries. Jacobian Morgan could have been in that discussion if it wasn't for injuries. But injuries notwithstanding, this guy has been the most dominant player in Black college football from week 1 to week 10, going into week 11 now. And it hasn't been close. These are his rushing numbers this season. 185, 167, 108, 278, 249, 185, 208, 198, 369. These are his touchdown totals in those games. 2, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 3, 1, 5. One game where he has less than 2 touchdowns and he still scored in that game. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Curtis Allen is the Black College Football Player of the Year. He should win the Deacon Jones Trophy. If he does not win the Deacon Jones Trophy, I need to know who voted. Because it's a flawed process if this man is not the Black College Football Player of the Year. I don't want to hear nothing about voters fatigue. They don't want to give it to a Division II school 2 years in a row. No, this man is the Black College Football Player of the Year, and it's not even close. It's not close. I'm being honest here. It's not close. Show me anyone who has had as much of an impact as this man has for his team. Show me. It's not close. And the fact that we're going into the last game of the regular season and he only needs 53 to get 2,000. Only needs 53 yards to get 2,000. And he hasn't had less than 100 all year. But anyway, let's move on. That was my hot take of the week. So let's move on to now. Albany State and Virginia Union need to find out who their respective opponents are going to be. So each conference has two teams who are still currently in the championship race. And we'll start with the SIAC as it is Benedict and Kentucky State, who both still have a chance to clinch a title berth this weekend. Kentucky, Kentucky State got a big win against Clark Atlanta to keep its title hopes in play. And Benedict, they were idle in conference play. They beat Virginia University Lynchburg in their homecoming contest, but no conference play for Benedict this weekend. So Kentucky State and Benedict are both deadlocked at 6-1. And simply put, Benedict simply just need to win, and they are in the conference championship game. That's all that needs to happen. Unfortunately, they have to do it against the Savannah State team that gave Albany State all it can handle in their game. So Benedict is going to have to really buck up to, and that's buck with a B. I did not curse. I ain't curse, mama. I ain't curse. No, but yeah, Benedict really needs to take it up a notch if they want to beat the Savannah State team. So, because record notwithstanding, I've said notwithstanding a lot in this video. Anyway, if put record aside, Savannah State is a lot better than what their record may indicate, and they are not at all going to be an easy win for Benedict. Kentucky State is not as much of a challenge. They have Lane in their final game of the year. To be fair, though, Lane has, steadily improved and given some teams some tough times over the past couple of weeks. So won't be the easiest outing for Kentucky State. But if I'm looking at Savannah State or Lane, I would much rather have Lane on my schedule with a chance to get to the SIAC championship game. But Kentucky State cannot think like that, because you think like that, you overlook your opponent and you go out there and you take a loss. So hopefully Kentucky State is not thinking like that Lane is just going to be an easy lick and we're just waiting to see if Benedict wins or loses or nothing like that. No, focus on Lane and then let everything else play out. So simply put, the scenario is Benedict wins, they are in. Kentucky State wins, Benedict loses, Kentucky State is in. So that's the scenario in the SIAC. Meanwhile, in the CIAA, it is Johnson C. Smith who overtakes Fayetteville State, beating them this weekend 17-14 on a last-second touchdown to get the lead. Well, not the lead, but they have the advantage in their hopes for CIAA championship berth. Bobby Smith in the final seconds after Fayetteville State, who was trailing 10-0 through three quarters, scored two unanswered touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but Bobby Smith comes through for Johnson C. Smith, scores a late touchdown after what was a before that play. It was a very important. I'll break down the game later this week, or no. But anyway, I'm confusing myself. But yeah, Bobby Smith, after a crucial game-winning fourth down conversion by Kelvin Durham, Bobby Smith scores the touchdown on the following play to give Johnson C. Smith the lead for good. And now Fayetteville State will have to wait for Johnson C. Smith. Both teams have tough games in the final week. Johnson C. Smith will go against the Livingstone team that just got a big win against Shaw. So now they have an opportunity to play spoiler like they did last year. Remember, Johnson C. Smith lost to Livingstone in the final week with a chance to get into the CIAA championship game. It wasn't just Fayetteville State that beat Johnson C. Smith in their quest for a CIAA championship berth. It was Livingstone in the final week that put the nail in the coffin for Johnson C. Smith. Had they beat Livingstone, they still could have gotten the championship game, but it didn't happen. So Johnson C. Smith exercised its Fayetteville State demons, snapped a 8-game losing streak against Fayetteville State, and now they're one win away. But they have a Livingstone team that is riding a dominant win against Shaw, and now they have to hope to get a win in this one. Should Johnson C. Smith lose to Livingstone, Fayetteville State will then have the opportunity to get into the CIAA championship game when they go up against Winston-Salem State on senior day. So Fayetteville State, they simply needed a win in this one to get into CIAA championship game. It did not happen that way. So now they have to win and hope for a Johnson C. Smith loss to get into the CIAA championship game. Virginia Union's just going to be waiting in the wings. You know, Virginia Union already has a win against um, Johnson C. Smith this season. The first win, CIAA championship win in their back-to-back was against Fayetteville State. So they have a recent history with both of these teams. So we'll see what happens in that one. Again, the scenario is Johnson C. Smith wins against Livingstone this upcoming Saturday. It'll be Virginia Union versus Johnson C. Smith in the CIAA championship game. If Fayetteville State wins and Johnson C. Smith loses, it'll be Virginia Union versus Fayetteville State. All right. Now we move on to the next topic, which is Delaware State is must-see TV. So Delaware State in their matchup against Norfolk State, which featured the first of what is hopefully many games between former Philadelphia Eagles teammates Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson in the stadium that they connected on many touchdowns with each other in Lincoln Financial Stadium. They engaged in what was a very entertaining game that Delaware State came out with a 27-20 win to keep its unbeaten record in conference intact. And in a national televised audience, that game, I believe, I didn't watch the game. Unfortunately, I had to work, so I wasn't able to watch the game on TV, but I believe it was on ESPNU. And it drew over 40,000 fans into the stadium. So that really shows the reach and the impact of both Deshaun and Mike and Michael Vick and what they're doing with their respective programs. And Delaware State, we have not said this in a long time. They are must-see TV because they were not only on national TV this past week, but now they will be on national TV again this upcoming week because, as it's reported by Delaware State, their game against Morgan State, which was initially planned to go down this Saturday and broadcast on ESPN Plus, will now be flexed up to Friday night, and it'll air on either ESPN2 or ESPNU. And that is a huge development for Delaware State, and just shows the impact that Deshaun Jackson has had on the team. I have to give Deshaun Jackson all the respect in the world for what he has done with this team this season. He called his shot. He said this was not going to be a 1-10 team or 1-11 team again this year. We are trying to get to the Celebration Bowl this year. Not only does he have them looking the best that they have looked in over a decade, but he has the eyes. He has the eyes on him. And he has this team playing in front of a nationally televised audience for the second week in a row. And that doesn't happen much. You know, you could say it's because of his name, but it's also because of the players on the field and what they are doing. Caden Bennett and what he is doing on offense, and likely should be the MEAC player of the year with the way that he's been performing all year. You know, this run game and with James Jones and Marquise Gillis and all these guys, you know, they are more than just the coach. You know, they are more than just a celebrity coach team. No, they have the talent to go with it as well. You know, so you could not be more happier for Delaware State and what they're doing, and just hopefully they continue what they're doing, because they have a great chance of getting back to the MEAC championship game, especially considering the team that they beat last week. North Carolina Central just kept itself in the race with a win against Howard. South Carolina State, by the skin of its teeth, beat Morgan State after giving up a significant fourth quarter run. in the final week, they have to go up against South Carolina State, and that could be for the MEAC championship. But we're not going to look too ahead to that. But we're just going to look at right now what Delaware State is doing, and it's something that nobody could have predicted. The last two seasons going 1-11. Deshaun Jackson being very confident about what he can do with this team, but us looking at what we've seen from Delaware State in the past 2 years, thinking like, I don't know if this delusional or he just crazy, but man, he had a different type of faith in the guys that he has in that locker room and the coaching staff that was put in place for him. And yeah, they are being requested to be on national TV once again, and they could inch one step closer to being in the MEAC championship game. I mean, not the MEAC championship game, in the Celebration Bowl to win the MEAC championship to get to the Celebration Bowl. But yeah, so Delaware State will be on national TV once again. They will play Morgan State, and that game will be broadcast on ESPN2 or ESPNU. I don't think that they put out an official report about which one of those it'll be, but that it'll be one of those networks. So be tuned in and support our fellow HBCUs. I'm going to get the time real quick for that game. I believe it'll be, I'm pretty sure it's prime time, 7 p.m. So yeah, tune in either ESPN2 or ESPNU to see Delaware State take on Morgan State. All right, last but not least, we have some NAIA football to talk about. Florida Memorial wins its third straight, and they are in the race for the Sun Conference Championship. Florida Memorial has been one of the more unsung teams in this HBCU football season. Fortunately, we don't talk about them much because they're in the NAIA, they're in the Sun Conference. That for us, it's like, who's the Sun Conference? But Florida Memorial wins its third straight, gets a 42-19 win over Weber International, and they improved to 4-1 in conference play. And they are in a tie with Southeastern Florida in the Sun. Well, let's pull up the Sun Conference standings real quick. I don't know why I didn't have this queued up. I was just about to say it, but I could just give you guys the visual aid instead of me having to say it. 1 second, and poof. All right, here it is. Kaiser first in the conference. That's Florida Memorial's only conference loss. They are 5-0, 8-0 overall. And the team above them, Southeastern. Now, don't let the record fool you. That is for that one loss on Southeastern's record. That was to Florida Memorial. So that Florida Memorial, that is the main reason why they are in this race, because that one loss for Southeastern was against Florida Memorial, and that could be a big deciding factor in whether or not they play for a Sun Conference championship. Florida Memorial, they I'm trying to look up the numbers for this game. It was the passing game for Florida Memorial. Didn't need a lot of pass attempts to get the job done. Tedrick Wilcox had 147 on 7 of 8 passing, scored 2 touchdowns in this game. And the defense for Florida Memorial was also big, had 3 big interceptions in this one to help the Lions. I don't know why I blanked on what their team was. The Lions come away with this win and keep itself in the Sun Conference championship race. Next week, this upcoming week, Florida Memorial will have Ave Marie on the schedule. And Ave Marie not doing too well. So this could be a win for Florida Memorial to keep themselves in the championship race. And that'll precede what the final week of the season for Florida Memorial when they go on the road to play St. Thomas, and that'll be a much tougher game should they get past Ave Marie. So simply put, Florida Memorial is hoping that Kaiser takes a loss or two. No, 2. They need to lose their final 2 to give Florida Memorial a chance to win the Sun Conference, because that's their only conference loss. Meanwhile, Southeastern, they have the head-to-head advantage over them. So simply they need to win out and hope for Kaiser to lose in its final 2 games, and Florida Memorial will be in the talks for the Sun Conference Championship. So there we go. Some NAIA coverage on this edition of the HBCU football takeaways. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you can, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our social platforms. So search up HBCU Sports on all of them. Promise we'll pick up. And you can go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in HBCU Sports. Until next time, I am Jarrett Hoffman. See you guys.